My name is Cristina Alvarez, and at 33 years old, I never expected to be at the center of the biggest corporate drama in TechNexus history. As business development director, securing major deals was my specialty until our $200 million next-gen acquisition put me in the crosshairs of CEO Robert Thompson. While he enjoyed luxury sheets at the Ritz-Carlton, my team slept in budget motels with flickering lights and mystery stains. The difference between his suite and our rooms became the question that sank his empire. Where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe as I reveal how one simple question destroyed everything he built. Before I dive into the catastrophic week that changed everything, let me introduce myself properly. I graduated with my MBA from Stanford 8 years ago, specializing in technology sector acquisitions and strategic partnerships. My career began at a mid-sized consulting firm where I cut my teeth on smaller deals before TechNexus recruited me 4 years ago. The company specialized in enterprise management software with a market valuation of $1.5 billion and ambitious growth plans that aligned perfectly with my career goals. TechNexus had built its reputation on innovative solutions for large corporations, streamlining their operations while providing powerful analytics tools. Our client list included 40% of Fortune 500 companies, and our growth trajectory impressed Wall Street analysts quarter after quarter. When I joined, we were on the cusp of expanding into international markets and needed someone who could identify strategic acquisition targets. Robert Thompson, our CEO, had a compelling origin story he loved, recounting at company events. Born in a small Midwestern town, he worked his way through college selling computer parts, graduated from Princeton, and founded his first tech startup at 26. After selling that company for a respectable $30 million, he led 2 more successful ventures before taking the helm at TechNexus 6 years ago. His leadership style combined charismatic public speaking with ruthless business tactics behind closed doors. Employees respected his business acumen, but feared his explosive temper and tendency to take credit for others' work. The executives who reported directly to Robert formed a tight circle that rarely questioned his decisions. The chief financial officer, Marcus Williams, managed company finances with conservative precision, but deferred to Robert on major investment decisions. Patricia Anderson, our chief technology officer, brilliantly led product development, but stayed clear of corporate politics. The chief operating officer position had seen 3 different occupants in 4 years, with the current COO, Andrew Miller, surviving by becoming Robert's yes man. My position sat just below the executive level, reporting to the Vice President of Business Development, Jonathan Reynolds, a thoughtful mentor who gave me significant autonomy after I demonstrated my capabilities. During my tenure, I had successfully negotiated 5 major acquisitions that expanded our product offerings and client base. Each deal strengthened my reputation internally and throughout the industry. My colleagues respected my thorough preparation, strategic thinking, and ability to build rapport with potential partners. My core team consisted of 3 exceptional professionals who complemented my skills perfectly. Jason Bailey served as our financial director, bringing 8 years of experience in valuation and financial modeling. His meticulous analysis could spot potential pitfalls in complex agreements that others might miss. Sarah Mitchell, our technical director, understood our products at a deeper level than anyone outside the development team. She could articulate complex technological integrations in terms that made sense to non-technical executives. Michael Davis, our legal specialist, had previously worked at a prestigious law firm specializing in technology mergers before joining TechNexus. His expertise in intellectual property law proved invaluable during negotiations. The Next-Gen Solutions deal represented our most ambitious acquisition to date. Their revolutionary cloud-based analytics platform could process data volumes 10 times faster than our current solution while using 30% less computational resources. The technology would give us a significant competitive advantage and justify a premium pricing strategy. Market analysis estimated it would increase our revenue by 20% annually for at least 3 years, justifying the $200 million price tag. I spotted Next-Gen Solutions emerging potential 18 months earlier when they were still relatively unknown. After convincing Jonathan to arrange an exploratory meeting, I began building a relationship with their leadership team. 6 months of careful groundwork followed, culminating in formal acquisition discussions. The preliminary negotiations went smoothly with both sides recognizing the potential synergies. I spent countless late nights preparing detailed integration plans, potential risk assessments, and value projections. My history with Robert Thompson contained several tense moments. 2 years earlier, he had unexpectedly intervened in final negotiations, with a promising data security startup demanding last-minute changes to terms we had carefully crafted over months. His aggressive approach offended the founders who walked away and eventually sold to our largest competitor. The incident taught me to keep Robert informed but minimize his direct involvement in delicate negotiations. This next-gen deal carried immense personal significance. Success would likely earn me a promotion to vice president when Jonathan retired next year. The board of directors had specifically mentioned this acquisition in their strategic objectives for the year, creating tremendous pressure to close successfully. My team had invested 6 months of intensive work, often sacrificing weekends and personal time. We believed wholeheartedly in the strategic value of bringing NextGen into our corporate family. As the final presentation and contract signing approached, I felt confident in our preparation. The terms satisfied both parties, the integration plan addressed potential challenges, and the financial projections justified the investment. What I failed to anticipate was how Robert Thompson's ego would threaten everything we had worked to build. The strategy meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in our glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Seattle. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows illuminating the polished walnut table where key stakeholders gathered. The room gradually filled with familiar faces. My team arrived first, followed by Jonathan Patricia from Technology, Marcus from Finance, and finally Robert 15 minutes late and absorbed in his phone. I had prepared comprehensive slide decks and supporting documents organized into leather portfolios for each attendee. The agenda outlined our approach to the final negotiation phase with NextGen scheduled to take place in New York the following week. Coffee steamed from branded mugs while nervous energy permeated the room. This deal would define careers. After Jonathan's brief introduction, I began presenting our carefully crafted strategy. 10 minutes into my presentation, Robert suddenly interrupted. "I think we need to take a different approach here," he announced, setting his phone down with deliberate slowness. "This deal is too important for middle management to handle. I'll be leading the negotiation team personally." The statement landed like a grenade in the middle of the table. Jason glanced at me with barely concealed alarm. Sarah stiffened in her chair while Michael maintained his professional poker face, though his fingers tightened around his pen. "Robert," I began, carefully controlling my voice, "we've been building this relationship with NextGen for 6 months. Their team is expecting our established approach and communication style. Changing leadership now might send confusing signals about our commitment." Robert leaned back in his chair, a dismissive smile playing across his lips. "Christina, I appreciate your work getting us to this point, but deals of this magnitude require executive presence. The NextGen board will expect to see the CEO personally involved in something this significant." Our preliminary discussions indicated they value consistent points of contact, I countered, sliding forward a summary of our relationship-building efforts. Thomas Wilson specifically mentioned appreciating our team's transparent communication style. "Thomas will understand this is how business works at this level," Robert replied with absolute certainty. "Besides, I bring 30 years of negotiation experience to the table. No offense, but that trumps your theoretical approach." The conversation spiraled as Robert systematically dismantled our strategy. Rather than emphasizing the technological integration benefits we had carefully documented, he insisted we focus primarily on price negotiation tactics. Where we had planned to highlight long-term partnership potential, he wanted aggressive timelines and performance penalties. Most alarmingly, he suggested we could promise certain integration timelines that our technical team had explicitly warned were unrealistic. "We need to push them hard on the price," Robert insisted. $200 million is our ceiling, not our target. I want to close this at 170 or less. Sarah couldn't remain silent any longer. The valuation analysis supports the full amount based on their technology stack and patent portfolio, she pointed out. Pushing too hard could make them reconsider other offers. Robert dismissed her concerns with a wave. "Every seller expects some hardball. Trust me on this." By meeting's end, Our carefully crafted approach lay in ruins, replaced by Robert's aggressive strategy. Jonathan remained conspicuously silent, throughout avoiding my gaze. As people filed out, Patricia whispered, "Try to work with it. Fighting him directly never ends well." That evening, Jason suggested meeting at Luciano's, an Italian restaurant 3 blocks from our office. We claimed a quiet corner booth where the warm lighting and soft background music provided welcome comfort after the day's tension. "This is Tech Vista all over again," Jason said after the waiter took our orders. He swirled his water glass ice cubes, clinking nervously. "Tech Vista?" I asked. "Before you joined." Robert stepped into negotiations for a promising payment processing system acquisition. We had everything aligned perfectly until he decided the asking price was 15% too high. He insulted their technology during what should have been a routine final meeting. They walked away and sold to Oracle 3 months later, for 30% more than we had offered. I sighed, recalling my own success stories that had occurred when Robert was traveling or otherwise occupied. 6 months earlier, I had closed the data sync acquisition while he attended conferences in Europe. The integration had proceeded smoothly, and the technology now formed a cornerstone of our security offerings. "What do we do?" I asked, more thinking aloud than expecting an answer. Jason considered for a moment. "We adapt. Document everything, prepare for his approach, but keep our original materials ready. Sometimes Robert loses interest if things don't go his way immediately." I spent that night wrestling with conflicting loyalties. My commitment to Tech Nexus remained strong. I believed in our products and our people. Yet Robert's approach threatened not just this deal, but potentially the company's reputation with a valuable potential partner. Eventually, I decided Jason was right. We would prepare to support Robert's approach while maintaining our original strategy as a backup. "We'll make this work," I told my team the next morning. "Let's revise our presentations to align with Robert's priorities but keep our comprehensive analysis available. This deal matters too much to let personal feelings interfere." They nodded, though Sarah couldn't hide her frustration. "Just remember," she said, "when this thing goes sideways, we need to be ready to save it." I had no idea how prophetic her words would prove to be. Our flight to New York departed early Monday morning. Robert had arranged for himself to fly first class while the rest of us were seated in economy scattered throughout the plane. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us, but we maintained professional facades. During the 6-hour flight, I reviewed our revised materials and contemplated contingency plans for various negotiation scenarios. Upon landing at JFK, we collected our luggage and found separate transportation to our accommodations. My phone dinged with an email from Robert's executive assistant detailing our lodging arrangements. The message was brief, and matter-of-fact, Robert will be staying at the Ritz-Carlton on Central Park South. "Your team has been booked at the Midtown Budget Inn on West 36th Street. Confirmation numbers attached." I frowned at my screen, having expected we would all stay at the same hotel to facilitate team coordination. A quick search revealed the stark contrast between the accommodations. While the Ritz-Carlton offered 5-star luxury at $700 per night, the Midtown Budget Inn was a dated 2-star property charging $89 per night, located in a less convenient area nearly 2 miles from our meeting location. When we arrived at the Midtown Budget Inn, the reality proved even worse than the online review suggested. The lobby featured worn carpet and dim lighting, with a security guard who appeared more interested in his phone than monitoring the entrance. The front desk clerk processed our check-ins with minimal interest. My room on the 4th floor featured peeling wallpaper, a bathroom with persistent dripping from the shower head, and a bed that sagged noticeably in the middle. The air conditioning unit rattled loudly, but produced little actual cooling. Street noise filtered through poorly sealed windows, and the Wi-Fi connection dropped repeatedly when I attempted to check emails. Sarah texted the group chat 30 minutes after check-in. "Anyone else have black mold in their bathroom?" followed by a disturbing photo. Jason replied, "My room smells like someone smoked for 20 years, then tried to cover it with cheap air freshener." Michael's contribution: "The desk in my room wobbles so badly I can't use my laptop on it. Also pretty sure there's a nightclub next door based on the bass thumping through the wall." We agreed to meet in the hotel lobby, the least offensive space available to us. Sarah arrived looking particularly incensed. "We should file a formal complaint," she insisted. "This is unacceptable. We're representing the company in a $200 million negotiation, and we're staying in conditions I wouldn't accept on a backpacking trip." "I agree it's inappropriate," I acknowledged, "but confronting Robert directly right before negotiations begin might create tension that could affect the deal." "The tension already exists," Jason pointed out. "He's literally staying in luxury while we're in borderline unsafe conditions. What message does that send about how he values the team?" Michael, ever practical, suggested, "Let's document everything but focus on the negotiations for now. We can address the accommodations issue after the deal closes." We agreed to Michael's approach, though the resentment simmered beneath our professional veneer. That afternoon, we took an Uber to the Ritz-Carlton for our team meeting before the initial next-gen introduction. The contrast between the hotels couldn't have been more striking. The Ritz-Carlton's elegant lobby featured marble floors, fresh flower arrangements, and attentive staff who seemed to anticipate guests' needs before they arose. The lighting created a warm, sophisticated atmosphere that immediately conveyed luxury and attention to detail. Robert kept us waiting in the lobby for 20 minutes, before texting to meet him in the hotel's upscale bar. When we arrived, he was already enjoying an expensive scotch. "Team," he greeted us with expansive cheer. "Settled into your accommodations. The company has to be budget-conscious, you understand. This place is only justifiable for client-facing executives." He gestured around. "But wait until you see my suite. Corner room, Central Park view, dedicated concierge service. Perfect for hosting the next-gen executives for private discussions." The casual disregard for our conditions felt like deliberate humiliation. Sarah fixed her gaze on her water glass, clearly struggling to maintain composure. Our first meeting with NextGen took place in their Manhattan offices that evening. Their headquarters occupied 3 floors of a modern building with views of the Empire State Building. Thomas Wilson, their CEO, greeted us warmly, but with clear attention to business. During introductions, Robert consistently positioned himself as the driving force behind the acquisition interest. When I first identified NextGen as a strategic target, he began, "Though it had been my research that discovered the company, I immediately recognized the potential synergies." Whenever I attempted to add context or technical details, Robert would interrupt with phrases like, "What Christina means to say island," or, "Let me clarify what my team member is trying to express." Each interruption undermined my credibility and created visible confusion among the next-gen executives. Thomas Wilson, a thoughtful man with silver temples and penetrating eyes, studied these interactions with increasing reservation. During a presentation about integration timelines, he directed a question specifically to me, only to have Robert intercept and provide an answer that contradicted our technical documentation. As the meeting concluded, Thomas pulled me aside. "Christina, based on our previous conversations, I had different expectations about this process," he said quietly. "Thomas, I understand your concerns," I replied carefully. "Our team remains fully committed to the collaborative approach we discussed earlier. Perhaps we could schedule a technical review session tomorrow with just our implementation teams." He nodded, some tension easing from his expression. "That would be helpful. We value substantive discussions about the actual integration challenges." On the ride back to our respective hotels, Robert declared the meeting a triumph. "Did you see how I established dominance right away? Classic negotiation tactic. Always let them know who's really in charge." None of us had the heart or courage to suggest that what he perceived as dominance had looked more like arrogance to our potential partners. The next morning brought new complications. Sarah called my room at 7:30, her voice congested and strained. "I can't make the technical meeting," she explained between coughs. "The mold in my bathroom triggered a serious allergic reaction. My eyes are swollen and I can barely breathe. I need to find a pharmacy and different accommodation." This development seriously compromised our capability. Sarah's technical knowledge was irreplaceable for the specialized discussions scheduled with NextGen's engineering team. After ensuring she had the resources to get medical attention, I contacted the front desk about changing her room, only to be told no other rooms were available. Since our hotel lacked business facilities, Jason, Michael, and I gathered at a nearby Starbucks to prepare for the day's meetings and coordinate a contingency plan for covering Sarah's absence. The crowded coffee shop hardly provided the professional environment needed for preparation, but we had little choice. "I've called our HR department about getting Sarah moved to another hotel," Michael reported, rejoining us after stepping outside for the call. "They said all changes to travel arrangements require CEO approval, since this trip exceeds the standard budget. So we're supposed to let a key team member suffer through an allergic reaction because of corporate red tape?" Jason asked incredulously. Before we could formulate a solution, Robert appeared unexpectedly at our table, his expression thunderous. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than our monthly rent combined. "What is this?" he demanded. "I expected to find you preparing at your hotel, not wasting time in a coffee shop. We have 30 minutes before we need to be at NextGen, and you're sitting here drinking lattes." "Our hotel doesn't have a business center or suitable meeting space," I explained. "And Sarah is having a severe allergic reaction to mold in her room. She needs medical attention and different accommodation." Robert barely acknowledged the second part of my statement. "You should have anticipated these needs and made alternative arrangements. This is basic business travel protocol." He glanced at his watch. "We don't have time for this now. The technical team will have to proceed without Sarah. This is why I needed to take control of this deal. Proper leadership anticipates problems before they occur." The technical presentation that afternoon became a slow-motion disaster. I attempted to cover Sarah's material despite lacking her specialized knowledge. When NextGen's chief technology officer asked detailed questions about API integration timelines, Robert jumped in with confident but entirely inaccurate assertions. "Our system can absolutely accommodate your legacy data structures without modification," he declared, contradicting everything in our technical assessment. 30-day integration maximum. I'll personally guarantee it." The NextGen technical team exchanged skeptical glances. Their lead architect, Angela Martinez, politely but firmly challenged this claim. "Our preliminary analysis with your team indicated at least 90 days for proper migration, with potential challenges around our proprietary data encryption." "Your analysis was overly cautious," Robert dismissed. "I've overseen dozens of integrations more complex than this." After this session, I excused myself to review the contract draft Robert had forwarded to NextGen that morning. To my horror, I discovered he had unilaterally modified several key provisions. The purchase price had been reduced from $200 million to $170 million, without corresponding adjustments to the assets being acquired. Worse, he had shortened several critical implementation deadlines to timeframes our team had explicitly identified as impossible to meet. I immediately called an emergency team meeting in Jason's room, the least problematic of our accommodations. Sarah had returned from the urgent care center, heavily medicated but insistent on participating. "These contract changes create massive liability exposure," Michael warned, highlighting problematic clauses. "The penalties for missing these implementation deadlines could cost us $15 million in the first year alone. And we will miss them." Sarah added, her voice raspy. "The 30-day integration timeline is technically impossible unless we cut every single quality assurance protocol." Jason looked equally troubled. "The revised valuation makes no sense given the patent portfolio we're acquiring. We're now offering significantly below market value while demanding accelerated deliverables. It's offensive." I knew I needed to confront Robert directly. I texted him requesting an urgent meeting and received instructions to come to his suite at the Ritz-Carlton immediately. The 20-minute Uber ride gave me time to organize my thoughts and steel my resolve. Robert's corner suite was breathtaking with panoramic views of Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline while luxury furnishings created an atmosphere of refined opulence. A half-empty bottle of premium champagne sat in an ice bucket on the dining table. "Make it quick, Christina," he said, not bothering to offer me a seat. "I have dinner with the NextGen CFO in an hour." I laid out our concerns, systematically emphasizing the legal and technical risks of the modified agreement. "Robert, these changes undermine 6 months of good faith negotiations. The timeline commitments are impossible to fulfill, which NextGen's technical team already knows. We're setting ourselves up for failure and potentially legal action." His expression hardened as I spoke. When I finished, he moved to the window looking out over the park rather than at me. Christina, you don't see the bigger picture here. This is high-level negotiation strategy. We start with aggressive terms, they push back. We find middle ground. Basic business principles. But we already found the middle ground during preliminary negotiations, I countered. These changes don't just reset discussions, they damage trust. We've spent months building. He turned, irritation flashing in his eyes. Let me be clear. I'm the CEO. I decide the strategy. Your job is to execute, not question. If that's a problem, there are plenty of talented people who would love your position. Are you threatening my job for raising legitimate concerns about a deal that could significantly impact our company? I asked, struggling to maintain professional composure. I'm reminding you of the chain of command, he replied coldly. Your team's job is to support my vision, not undermine it. I brought you all to New York despite the expense, and instead of gratitude, I'm getting resistance at every turn. Expense, I echoed incredulously. Your suite costs more per night than our entire team's accommodations combined, where Sarah is having an allergic reaction to mold. That's enough, he snapped. I won't justify corporate expenditure policies to a director. I'm the face of this company. I need to project success and authority. Your accommodations are appropriate for your roles. His dismissive attitude ignited something in me. This isn't about hotel star ratings, Robert. It's about respect for the team doing the actual work to make this deal happen. What I'm hearing is insubordination, he replied icily. I've half a mind to send you back to Seattle tonight. The only reason I won't is that it might raise questions with Next General. So here's what's going to happen. You will support my approach without further complaint, or I'll make sure the board knows exactly who sabotaged this acquisition. I left his suite with his threat ringing in my ears, professionally shaken, but increasingly certain we were headed for disaster. The confrontation with Robert left me feeling professionally vulnerable and ethically conflicted. Rather than returning immediately to the Midtown Budget Inn, I took a long walk through Central Park, needing physical movement to process my churning thoughts. The early evening air carried a hint of approaching autumn, and families were beginning to pack up their picnics and games as sunset approached. My career path until now had been relatively straightforward. Work hard, exceed expectations, advance. But I had never faced such a direct conflict between professional self-preservation and doing what I knew to be right. Robert had made it clear: support his approach or face career suicide. Yet his approach seemed destined to either kill the deal or saddle our company with impossible commitments. After an hour of walking, I found myself near a small cafe on the east side of the park. Needing a moment to regroup before facing my team, I stepped inside, ordered a coffee, and found a quiet corner table. I had just taken my first sip when a voice interrupted my thoughts. Christina Alvarez from TechNexus. I looked up to find Grace Williams, NextGen's chief financial officer, standing beside my table. In her early 50s, with a stylish gray bob and intelligent eyes, Grace projected quiet competence. Grace, hello, I replied, surprised by the coincidence. Would you like to join me? If I'm not interrupting, she said, setting down her tea. You look deep in thought. Something about her genuine manner broke through my professional facade. Just contemplating the interesting dynamics of corporate negotiations, I said with a wry smile. Ah, she nodded knowingly. You mean like when a CEO undermines months of productive discussion in a single meeting? The directness of her observation startled a laugh from me. That obvious, was it? Thomas and I have been discussing our concerns, she admitted. Your preliminary work with us was exemplary. Professional, transparent, technically sound. Today felt like negotiating with an entirely different company. The conversation that followed felt surprisingly candid for two people on opposite sides of a major business transaction. Grace shared that NextGen had multiple interested parties, but had prioritized TechNexus based largely on cultural alignment and technical compatibility. Money matters, of course, she explained, but at this stage, in our company's evolution, finding the right home for our technology and our people matters more. We need a partner who values what we've built and will nurture it, not just absorb it. I found myself sharing some of my frustrations, carefully framed as differences in negotiation philosophy rather than direct criticism of Robert. Grace listened attentively occasionally, nodding in understanding. As our conversation wound down, she mentioned something that changed everything. By the way, we were surprised to learn your board chair will be joining tomorrow's session. Elizabeth Burke called Thomas directly to arrange it. My surprise must have shown clearly on my face. The TechNexus board rarely involve themselves directly in acquisitions until the final approval stage. The entire board executive committee will be there, Grace continued. Apparently, they consider this acquisition strategically significant enough to warrant their personal attention. This revelation shifted the entire dynamic. Elizabeth Burke was a legendary businesswoman who had founded 2 successful tech companies before joining our board. Known for her sharp intelligence and unwavering ethical standards, she had personally recruited several key executives, though notably not Robert, who had been hired by her predecessor. After parting ways with Grace, I immediately called an urgent team meeting back at our hotel. Sarah had managed to switch rooms after documenting her allergic reaction with medical records, though the new accommodation was hardly an improvement. The board executive committee will be at tomorrow's meeting, I announced to my startled team. Elizabeth Burke, James Taylor, and Diana Rodriguez. That's unprecedented, Jason remarked. They never involve themselves at this stage. It changes everything, Michael added thoughtfully. Robert can steamroll us, but he can't ignore the board. I made a decision then that might end my career, but felt necessary to protect both the deal and the company. We need to prepare comprehensive documentation of everything that's transpired. Original contract terms versus Robert's modifications. Technical timelines, the hotel situation. Everything. Through the night, we worked in Sarah's slightly less moldy room, assembling a complete picture of the negotiation process from beginning to present. We included email trails, technical assessments, financial models, and even photos of our hotel conditions compared to published images of the Ritz-Carlton. At 6:30 the next morning, my phone rang. Elizabeth Burke's name appeared on the screen. Christina, good morning. Her crisp voice came through. I'd like to meet with you privately before today's session. 7:30 Garden Cafe across from the Ritz. Just you, please. The call ended before I could even process the request. I showered quickly in the lukewarm water my hotel provided, dressed in my most professional outfit, and took an Uber to the meeting location. Elizabeth was already seated when I arrived, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, her silver hair swept into an elegant updo. At 62, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had broken through countless glass ceilings. Thank you for coming on short notice, she began after I sat down. I'll be direct. The board has concerns about how this acquisition is proceeding. Several key investors have reached out with questions about changes to the original valuation and timeline commitments. Her penetrating gaze held mine. I'd like to hear your assessment of the situation. The unvarnished truth, please. In that moment, I made my choice. Taking a deep breath, I laid out everything. The months of careful relationship building with NextGen, the last-minute strategy, changes, the technical impossibilities in the revised contract, the disparity in accommodations, and what it symbolized about team valuation. I shared our documentation and explained the potential consequences of proceeding with Robert's approach. Elizabeth listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she sat back and regarded me thoughtfully. This aligns with other reports we've received, she said finally. Christina, the board has been monitoring Robert's leadership style for some time. There have been concerns. Multiple vice presidents have left in the past year, citing his management approach. The data sync integration succeeded largely because he was in Europe during critical phases, according to Jonathan's reports. Her revelation stunned me. I had assumed Robert's position was unassailable. Today's meeting will proceed as scheduled, Elizabeth continued. I suggest you have your original materials available. Be prepared to address technical questions honestly, particularly about implementation timelines. That may directly contradict Robert's statements, I cautioned. A small smile curved her lips. Yes, it may indeed. The final presentation was scheduled for 2 o'clock in NextGen's main conference room. I arrived early with my team, ensuring our original documentation was organized and accessible alongside the materials Robert expected us to present. The space gradually filled with executives from both companies. The next-gen contingent included Thomas Wilson, Grace Williams, their CTO, Angela Martinez, and several board members. At precisely 1:50, the TechNexus Board Executive Committee entered, Elizabeth Burke impeccably composed, James Taylor, a former tech CEO with a reputation for financial precision, and Diana Rodriguez, who had built and sold 3 successful startups before joining our board. They exchanged pleasantries with the next-gen leadership, while Robert, who had arrived moments before them, looked visibly surprised by their presence. "Elizabeth first wasn't aware you would be joining us today," he said, attempting to maintain his usual confident demeanor. "The board considers this acquisition strategically significant," she replied smoothly. "We wanted to demonstrate our institutional commitment." The meeting began with Robert taking center stage, presenting what he described as our vision for the acquisition. He emphasized aggressive growth projections and ambitious integration timelines, without acknowledging they contradicted our technical team's assessments. Throughout his presentation, he positioned himself as the architect of the acquisition strategy, repeatedly using phrases like "my approach" and "my team" when referring to work we had performed. "We're prepared to move forward at $170 million, he announced confidently, with full integration completed within 30 days of closing. Thomas Wilson maintained a neutral expression, though I noticed Grace Williams making notes with particular intensity. When Robert concluded, Thomas thanked him and opened the floor to questions. "Your technical integration timeline seems ambitious," Angela Martinez observed. "Our previous discussions with your team suggested 90 days as a realistic minimum." "Those were preliminary estimates," Robert dismissed. "I've reviewed the technical requirements personally and determined 30 days is adequate." I saw Sarah stiffen beside me, her expression professionally blank, but her eyes communicating volumes. James Taylor, our board's financial expert, asked several pointed questions about valuation methodology that Robert struggled to answer with specificity. Diana Rodriguez inquired about retention strategies for key next-gen personnel, another area where Robert's answers contradicted our previously discussed approach. Then Michael Chen, NextGen's board chairman, an elegant man in his 60s who had been quietly observing, leaned forward with what seemed like a casual question. "Robert, I'm curious about your team's experience here in New York. Where are they staying during this visit?" The question appeared innocuous, but something in his tone suggested deeper purpose. Robert smiled confidently. "We're all staying in the Midtown area. Very convenient locations, centrally located for our meetings." Elizabeth Burke's eyebrow raised slightly. She turned toward me. "Christina, perhaps you could share more about your team's accommodations. I understand there were some issues." The moment crystallized everything. Robert's expression flashed warning, but Elizabeth's steady gaze gave me courage. I stood aware that every eye in the room was now focused on me. "Our team is staying at the Midtown Budget Inn, a 2-star hotel approximately 2 miles from this location," I stated clearly. "The conditions include rooms with mold resulting in Sarah experiencing a severe allergic reaction requiring medical attention. The hotel lacks business facilities, reliable internet, or adequate workspaces." A murmur ran through the room. Michael Chen's expression darkened. "And where are you staying, Robert?" he asked directly. Robert shifted uncomfortably. "As CEO, I require certain facilities to properly represent our company. I'm at the Ritz-Carlton." Jason unexpectedly spoke up. "For transparency, the cost difference is approximately $600 per night per person." He pulled out his phone. "I have photos of our accommodations if that would be helpful." "That won't be necessary," Thomas Wilson interjected, his expression grave. Michael Chen leaned back in his chair. "At NextGen, we have a company policy. Everyone from me down to our newest programmer stays at the same hotels during business travel. We find it builds team cohesion and reflects our values about equal treatment." Robert attempted damage control. "Different roles have different requirements. I need to be available to host executive discussions in appropriate settings." "Interesting perspective," Michael replied coolly. "In my experience, leaders demonstrate their values through actions, not accommodations. How you treat your team speaks volumes about how you would likely treat our people post-acquisition." The atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. Grace Williams exchanged glances with Thomas, who nodded slightly. "I think we need to reassess our position," Thomas announced. Given what we've observed today, we have significant concerns about cultural compatibility between our organizations. We're going to pause negotiations pending internal discussions. Robert's face flushed red. This is absurd. Hotel arrangements are a trivial administrative detail. The strategic value of this acquisition far outweighs such minor considerations. On the contrary, Elizabeth interjected firmly, how an organization treats its people is never trivial. It reflects fundamental values that inform all business decisions. She turned to Thomas. We understand your concerns and respect your position. Perhaps we could reconnect next week, after both organizations have had time to reflect. Thomas agreed, and the meeting concluded with strained politeness. As the next-gen team departed, Elizabeth turned to Robert. The board will convene in the small conference room next door. Robert, please join us immediately. Christina, please wait here. We'll need to speak with you shortly. As they exited, leaving my team and me alone in the suddenly quiet conference room, Sarah broke the tense silence. Did that just happen? She whispered. I think I just ended my career, I replied, feeling strangely calm despite the enormity of what had transpired. Jason shook his head. You just saved the company from a disaster. Those implementation timelines would have bankrupted us with penalty clauses. Michael nodded agreement. Not to mention the reputational damage from failing to deliver. We would have lost credibility with every potential partner moving forward. We sat in silence for nearly 40 minutes before Elizabeth returned alone. Her expression revealed nothing as she took a seat across from me. The board has removed Robert from this negotiation effective immediately, she stated without preamble. We've placed him on administrative leave pending a full review of his management practices. I struggled to process this information. What happens to the deal? That depends largely on you, Elizabeth replied. The board would like you to lead a revised approach to next-gen, assuming you're willing. We've already spoken with Thomas Wilson, who indicated they would be open to resuming discussions under new leadership. The responsibility was enormous, but I felt equal to it. I would be honored to continue the negotiation. Our original framework addressed their concerns while still delivering significant value to TechNexus. Elizabeth nodded a hint of approval in her expression. The board agrees. We've reviewed your original documentation and find it thorough and strategically sound. One more thing, she added. Please have your team move to appropriate accommodations immediately. The Ritz has several rooms available. Use my name for the booking. 1 week after the fateful meeting, I found myself seated in the TechNexus boardroom back in Seattle. The space felt different somehow, as though the recent events had physically transformed it, along with the company. Elizabeth Burke sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members. Christina, thank you for joining us, Elizabeth began. We wanted to update you personally on several decisions before they're announced company-wide. She proceeded to explain that Robert's administrative leave had become permanent separation following a comprehensive investigation. The hotel incident proved to be just the visible tip of a problematic leadership iceberg, she explained. We've uncovered numerous instances of misrepresentation to the board, inappropriate treatment of staff, and questionable business decisions. James Taylor added, Your documentation was instrumental in helping us understand the full scope of the issues. Several former executives have since come forward with corroborating accounts. The board unanimously agrees that you demonstrated exceptional judgment and integrity under difficult circumstances, Diana Rodriguez continued. We would like you to lead the renewed negotiations with NextGen with full authority to implement your original strategy. This vote of confidence felt validating after the turmoil of the past weeks. Thank you for your trust, I replied. I believe we can still salvage this partnership, though perhaps with revised expectations. We understand the original $200 million valuation may no longer be attainable given the disruption, Elizabeth acknowledged. The board is prepared to approve a restructured deal that prioritizes relationship repair and long-term strategic alignment over immediate financial terms. The internal investigation expanded beyond Robert's leadership. A complete review of travel policies revealed systematic disparities in how different levels of employees were treated. The board instituted new guidelines ensuring equitable accommodations regardless of title. They also established an ethics committee to review major decisions and provide employees with a channel to raise concerns without fear of retaliation. 2 weeks later, my team and I returned to New York, this time all staying at a business-class hotel that balanced comfort with reasonable costs. The renewed discussions with NextGen proceeded with remarkable openness. Thomas Wilson expressed appreciation for our transparency during the previous debacle. "It told us everything we needed to know about the character of your organization," he remarked during our first meeting. "Not the initial problem, but how you handled it when it came to light." Grace Williams worked closely with Jason to restructure the financial terms. The revised valuation settled at $150 million, reflecting both market realities and a more gradual integration timeline. While lower than our original target, the adjusted terms included more favorable earn-out provisions and eliminated the punitive penalty clauses Robert had inserted. Sarah and Angela Martinez developed a realistic 90-day integration plan with clearly defined milestones. Their technical teams began collaborative sessions even before the deal formally closed, building relationships that would prove invaluable during the actual integration. 3 months after the confrontation at NextGen, we finalized the acquisition. The board recognized our team's extraordinary efforts by promoting each member. Sarah became our chief integration officer, overseeing all future technical mergers. Jason advanced to senior financial director with expanded authority. Michael received a substantial bonus and partnership track at our external law firm. As for me, Elizabeth offered the position of vice president of business development, with Jonathan shifting to an advisory role ahead of his planned retirement. "You've demonstrated not just business acumen, but the kind of ethical leadership this company needs moving forward," she told me during the official promotion meeting. The corporate culture at TechNexus underwent a remarkable transformation over the following months. Transparency became a core value, with executive decisions regularly communicated to all employees. Travel policies were standardized across levels, and team achievements received proper recognition rather than being attributed to executives. 6 months after his departure, I unexpectedly encountered Robert at an industry conference. The encounter might have been awkward, but he surprised me by approaching directly. "Christina," he acknowledged with a nod. "Congratulations on closing the NextGen deal. The integration seems to be proceeding well, based on industry reports." "Thank you," I replied, studying him curiously. He appeared less imposing, somehow the aggressive confidence replaced with something more reflective. "I've had time to think about what happened," he continued. "While I don't agree with how everything unfolded, I can acknowledge that my approach had flaws." Coming from Robert, this qualified as a profound admission. "We all have learning opportunities," I offered diplomatically. A hint of his old smile appeared. "That's a generous way to put it. I'm consulting now, working with founders on executive presence, teaching them what to do and sometimes what not to do based on personal experience." As we parted ways, I reflected on my own journey through this challenging period. The initial guilt I had felt about my role in Robert's downfall had gradually transformed into acceptance that I had done what was necessary to protect both my team and the company. Standing up for ethical treatment and honest business practices wasn't disloyalty, but rather the highest form of commitment to the organization's true interests. My relationships with my team deepened through our shared experience. Sarah and I began a weekly lunch tradition to discuss challenges and innovations. Jason became a trusted advisor on financial strategy. Even beyond our immediate circle, I found new respect throughout the company as someone who would speak truth regardless of personal risk. 1 year after the acquisition, NextGen's technology had been fully integrated into our product suite, driving a 26% increase in revenue, exceeding even our original projections. The technical teams from both companies had merged seamlessly, creating a collaborative culture that attracted top talent. TechNexus received recognition in business publications for our transformed corporate culture and ethical leadership approach. Throughout this journey, I learned perhaps the most important business lesson of my career. True success isn't measured by deal size or personal advancement, but by maintaining integrity, even when it carries significant personal risk. Leadership isn't about luxury hotel suites or dominating conversations, but about valuing people speaking truth and making decisions that benefit the entire organization rather than personal interests. The most valuable assets in business aren't buildings or products, but relationships built on trust and mutual respect. When we recognize that every team member deserves dignity and fair treatment, we create organizations capable of sustainable success rather than flashy deals that ultimately collapse under the weight of their contradictions. Have you ever had to stand up for what's right in your workplace? What happened when you did? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this corporate drama resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life business lessons. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with similar workplace challenges. Remember, sometimes the most important career move is simply having the courage to speak the truth when it matters most. Thank you for watching, and I wish you both success and integrity in all your professional endeavors.